What's going on, folks? This is Coach Marcus, Pro Fan Talk, and we are finally done. The end of it. What a weekend. The draft is over. Howie Roseman knocked it out of the park again. Make no bones about it. Howie Roseman made every GM in the league look stupid. Maybe with the exception of the Texans. Because the Texans did some shrewd moves in their own right. But I tell you what, man, Howie Roseman, he put his thing down. He was calling his shots and knocking the ball out of the park. A lot of rumors, a lot of media sources, and what I've been hearing, stuff like that happens every year. Everybody falls for the same stuff every year. Nobody knows anything. And at the end of the day, everybody's guessing like everybody else. Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, all them analysts on ESPN and on PFF and on every other network and website and podcast that's doing reactions, all of that kind of stuff. Everybody is guessing. Nobody knows jack. I am not exempt. I thought there was something going to the Texans not taking C.J. Stroud because of an agent. Makes sense. It's the same agent that Deshaun Watson has. They don't want to deal with Deshaun Watson. And what do? Draft C.J. Stroud. All of that nonsense, smoke and mirrors. Props to the Texans. Props to D'Amico Ryans keeping everything under wraps and under the gun so don't nobody know nothing. And you know what? They got the guy they did. Then they pulled an Aikido move on the whole draft, traded back up for a back-to-back pick, and got the other guy they wanted. C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson. You had to applaud them, and then Howie Roseman was like, hold my beer. Howie was like, hold on, I got something for you. When they got to Detroit, I'm thinking Detroit is going to take Jalen Carter. And then they take Jahmyr Gibbs. I didn't see that one coming. Bijan's going to Atlanta. And again, all of those people that think they know everything, they think they can read what the Eagles need, and he would fit great in this offense. And that's not necessarily untrue. But anybody that's from Philadelphia and knows Howie Roseman's history knows that he doesn't take running backs in the first round. So you're looking at what's the hot thing versus his history. I'm going to take his history. I'm going to take the things that he's done time and time again for the last few drafts. That was a safe bet. A lot of people wanted Bijan Robinson, and rightfully so. But it didn't make sense for the things that Howie normally does. And you know what? And I was saying, if Jalen Carter falls to us, we got him. We moved up one spot, traded with Chicago, and got that pick. We got our guy. Arguably the best player in the draft. Period. Not a quarterback, not a wide receiver. Jalen Carter. Y'all can say what you want to. I've been hearing all of this stuff about red flags. But that wasn't... After that got settled, then you hear all of this stuff about like behavior issues. And I'm like, okay, let me see if I can find some of this stuff. I couldn't find nothing. And that's happened a couple of times this year. Everybody's talking about, well, such and such slipped. Keely Ringo, Nolan Smith. Both of them slipped right to us. And then you hear all of this stuff. Yeah, I heard bad character guys, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And the funny thing is anytime there's a situation with athletes from very, very high visibility schools, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, all those schools in the SEC. Whenever you have an athlete and there's been some trouble, everybody knows about it. It's in the blotters. It's in, you can go online and find what happened. You can't find really much. And it's funny because I saw the interview, it was a TMZ interview with N'Kobe Dean, and he mentioned that. He was like, I don't know where people are getting all of this stuff from. That he was a bad dude and bad in the locker room and things of that nature. It was like, I don't understand where that's coming from. Basically calling everybody out because it's amazing Where does this stuff come from? Materializes out of thin air. Even going back to that issue with Brady Quinn, bringing up something that doesn't really matter to how a team feels. All of a sudden, he has to mention, and this was his choice, he has to mention that because he didn't go to a Manning passing camp, that maybe some teams kind of frowned upon that because the Manning family is so ingrained in the NFL. And that turned out to be complete bullcrap. But he put it out there, and he put it out there first. Then he wants to heap the praise on the back end. That's why he caught so much heat. And some of our own, Rueben Franks was catching heat for some of the questions he was asking about Jalen Carter's accountability. He didn't feel that he was, showed much accountability in the Zoom call. Howie Roseman took issue with it. Like, well, what do you expect him to do? And I agree. I don't necessarily mind him asking the question, but the timing just sucked. Like, literally, the dude is like in his moment, and you want to bring up that. And it's like, for what? You'd have had plenty of opportunity afterwards. You'd have had plenty of opportunity to sit down with him one-to-one and ask those questions. So the optics of it looks like you got an angle. You trying to instigate something. That's what it looks like. Might not have been what you were trying to do. That's what it looks like. Timing is everything. And that question was that wasn't the right time for it. Because, and I said it in one of my social media posts, asking a question like that at that time is like asking somebody, do they love their mother? Of course they're going to say yes. But until you watch how somebody treats their mom, that's the proof you need. Regardless of what somebody says, the proof is in the pudding. So if you ask somebody how they feel about a situation, or are you sorry, or being held accountable, they're not going to say anything that's going to satisfy you. You got to watch their actions. Prime example was Michael Vick and everything that people had to say when we signed him with the dogs and all of this. And you had all of these people up in arms. You had people up in arms because he was a dog killer and this, that, and the other. And you dealing with, and you got people that's fussing and cussing that ain't never did a damn thing for an animal in their life. But they just wanted to jump on board and have something to say. That's the kind of era we in. Everybody wants to jump online and they got something to say. But timing is everything. Back to the original point. Timing is everything. And you know what? Rueben Franks, he caught the heat for it. I don't expect him to back down from it, and he should. You said it. Deal with it. I didn't really hear too many people really address it. Barrett Brooks addressed it on his show. But other than that, I really didn't hear too much about it, except seeing stuff on social media because he was blocking folks left and right. But it is what it is. But the Eagles, we kept it moving. Of course, we getting Jalen Carter. Nolan Smith drops right in our laps. He dropped all the way down to 30. Nobody thought he was going to drop that far. And it's the second year in a row. Same thing happened with Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean was the best linebacker in the draft. He should have been a top 10 pick, and he dropped. For something somebody said, and then once again, when Nolan Smith drops to us, why is he still on the board at number 30? Then everybody's speculating. Did he get hurt? Is he a bad character guy? Then everybody's reaching and reaching for whatever, pulling stuff out the air. And I had one of my friends online say the same thing. He was heard some red flag things over the years, and it's like, didn't you look it up? Like, nah, apparently this was a good kid, real close to his mom, was right by his mom's side when she was battling breast cancer. So, no, where did that narrative come from? It has to be a reason. Well, maybe he just wasn't the guy that people were looking for. Maybe all of these teams got some bad information. We'll get into more of that later, the bad information getting put out there. But for all intent and purposes, Nolan Smith should not have dropped that far. And people are going to be sorry for it because that's another Georgia Bulldog with the Philadelphia Eagles. We get that other pick. Then we go down to 65. We get the big man, offensive tackle Tyler Steen, Alabama dude, another guy from the SEC. Fortify our offensive line. Then we get Sidney Brown from Illinois, a safety. We need that secondary depth. Now we got it. Then we get Keely Ringo, another DB from Georgia, another Georgia Bulldog. Kid runs a 4.39. I believe he's 6'2", tall guy, can play physical, can cover, got good speed, good wingspan. Why is he still on the board? Then we get Tanner McKee. Watch a little tape of him. He's a big, tall kid. He's not a runner, but he can run. He runs to get himself out of trouble, but he's mobile enough to maneuver in that pocket and take off and get a first down when he needs to. Got a good touch, strong arm. He looks good. He'll be a good backup. And then the last pick we had was Moro Ojomo, the guy from Texas, defensive tackle from Texas. They got him listed as a defensive line edge. I don't really see him as an edge. He's not that fast. He's fast enough at his size, but when you're competing with Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, he's not that fast. He's not 4.5 fast, but he's a strong anchor. I can see him playing beside or behind Fletcher Cox because he's a load and he can move the crowd a little bit. I saw him. I saw his tape at the combine. Repped out 29 on the bench press. 40 time wasn't great, but he's a big guy as a D tackle. He doesn't have to have blazing speed, but he's good. But even seeing him lets you know how much of a talent Jordan Davis is. Jordan Davis is 30 to 40 pounds heavier and ran a 4.8. Like, I still don't think people appreciate how unique that is for somebody that big. So hopefully we'll be able to see a little bit more of Jordan Davis this year because this rotation on our defensive line is going to be incredible. Absolutely incredible. Then after all of that, we signed DeAndre Smith from Detroit. Detroit shocked everybody by signing Jahmyr Gibbs when they could have got Carter. So that blew everybody out of the water. So you knew his days was numbered. Another guy from Georgia. Howie calls him up. We get the sign. So now we got another running back. And that running back carved us up for 144 yards on 15 carries and a touchdown when we played him week 1. So the kid got some skills. I mean, we are Georgia North. NCAA is investigating the Philadelphia Eagles because of recruiting tampering. The Georgia Bulldogs just got the biggest recruiting video a school could ever have because they got all of those players playing with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's huge. And all those kids know each other, so the learning curve is going to be lower. And you got Nakobe Dean, the captain of those championship teams, now that's been here a year, so he can be considered a vet, and he's going to be starting this year. He going to usher him in. Plus, you got all that veteran leadership on that line. You still got Brandon Graham. You still got Fletcher Cox. You still got Jason Kelsey. We still got the stalwarts on our squad. Now you got the veteran leadership in the backfield with Bradbury and Slay. Avonte Maddox is coming back. Now you got these young boys in our secondary. Our defense is deep. We might not get to 77 sacks or whatever it was again, but guess what? We're going to be bringing some pressure. Rest assured. So, a lot of stuff going on at the draft. Our Eagles running back room, good grief. Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, DeAndre Swift, Boston Scott, and Trey Sermon. That room is crowded, and we only got one ball. So it'll be very interesting to see how they're going to divvy up who's getting the playing time. If Rashad Penny is healthy, that dude is a beast. Because he's got a chip on his shoulder because he's been hurt. But when he's been healthy, he has been very productive. We already know what we got with Boston Scott. We already know what we got with Kenny Gainwell. Trey Sermons is the X factor. DeAndre Swift, you know he got skills because he carved us up, like I said before. We got options. It is going to be very interesting in camp. And that's another thing. What's going to happen in camp? Because they don't hit in camp. So the scrimmages and the preseason games are going to be paramount because you can't bang in camp anymore. Team on team doesn't really yield much. So it's interesting how that works out. Hopefully now we can stop hyping these athletes up and ignoring what we see on tape. Will Levis Had a really good combine. But he never should have been in the conversation as a top pick. Never should have been there. If you watch the tape, you'll know. He threw a whole bunch of interceptions. Yes, you can say Anderson was the same way or even worse. But Will Levis didn't put together a combine workout like Anderson did. Not even close. Anderson did things nobody's ever seen before. That's why he shot up the charts. His physical stature, running a 4.3 at 240 pounds, being 6'4", 6'5", or whatever. And you can say it was because of coordinator and some different things, and probably rightfully so. But when you look at the tape, that tells you what you need to know. And for the story to get out on a Reddit, on a social media page, that he's telling people that he knows Carolina's going to take him number one, and everything that started with that. The Vegas odds were changing. And it's like, where is this coming from? And why would Vegas be following what somebody's saying on social media? That didn't even make sense. So it was much ado about nothing. The kid came in with a lot of hype, saw him on the red carpet, and he sat there the whole time. Lamar Jackson all over again, except Lamar Jackson was still picked in the first. Will Levis went home, went back to the hotel room, and didn't show up for day 2 when he was the second pick of day 2. Everybody else showed up and got their chance to walk across the stage. That's the nature of the beast. That's part of the business. And you got to be able to handle that part of the business. It's not always going to go your way, regardless of what everybody tells you. Maybe you was listening to the wrong person. Somebody had to put that out there because that story got traction, a lot of traction. Don't believe the hype. Watch the tape and do your own evaluation. Same thing with, like I said earlier, about the C.J. Stroud thing and his agent. Texans was like, whatever. That's the guy we want, and that's what we're taking. So all of that smoke and mirrors stuff, that's all it was. Trying to fake everybody out so that nobody knows what you're going to do. And the Texans had that down pat. Had it down pat. So the other funny thing was Micah Parsons, sick to death of seeing what the Eagles were doing, and A.J. Brown like giving him the business. Handing them a box of tissues. And it's like, come on, man. You just go ahead and just say you want to play for the Eagles. Because everybody thinks that's what he wants to do. And that cannot go over well in the Cowboys locker room. That's funny. I mentioned last year during the season, I said, Cowboys are going to be scary when Micah Parsons takes over that team. When he's the leader of that team. But he's getting into some other stuff. He's doing way too much talking. Way too much talking. And that is where that ego down in Dallas kind of gets into you. Talking is fine, but it's just not a good look. Not a good look. The Texans and the Eagles, both of them got A+ for this draft. Howie knocked it out the park again and again and again. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Howie Roseman is the wizard of Philadelphia. He's learned his lesson. He's taken his lumps from all of that Chip Kelly nonsense. He's taken his lumps, and he's better for it. He made all of these other GMs look straight stupid. And he's the guy running our ship. And he's the guy that has our quarterback. So it is a good time here in Philadelphia. It is a great time for the Philadelphia Eagles. So we're going to see what's going to happen coming up this year. I'm very excited. We got the players. I'm ready to get camp started and get this ball moving. Go Birds.